Check.
Stuffed up.
Stuffed up. Say that again.
I'm stuffed up. Stuffed. Check. 1, 2.
Stuffed.
I'm
Stuffed crust. No.
now I'm hungry. Now I'm stuffed up and hungry.
Pizza. Shout out to the Pop Punkin' Pizza podcast.
Yes.
I think
that's what this podcast is missing is pizza.
That's a podcast. The Pop Punkin' Pizza podcast.
Yeah. I'm sure they have pizza during their podcast.
Jacques didn't give me pizza when I was
Jacques
on the podcast.
Oh,
However,
that's a little misleading then.
Yeah, I mean, he could have shent it. He could have shent it all the way from Chicago.
Shent it from Chicago.
Shent it from Chicago.
There used to be a way to stick it to the man. It was called rock and roll. But guess what? Oh no. The man ruined that too with a little thing called MTV.
Don't talk to me about rock and roll. I'm not there in the clubs and on the streets and I'm living it. I am rock and roll.
Did I listen to pop music because I was miserable? Or was I miserable because I listened to pop music?
Speaking of Chicago, this band is not from Chicago.
I knew.
If they're not from Chicago, I'll give you one more guess. Where are they from?
Virginia.
No, New Jersey. Come on.
Jersey.
Jersey. We are talking about Can't Swim and their new album, which I always get this title wrong, so I'm going to look at This Too Won't Pass.
Wow.
This Too Won't
It's
Pass.
Uplifting. It's encouraging.
It's uplifting. It's encouraging. Yeah. Oh.
If you're going through a rough time, this is what you want.
Yeah. I mean,
It's not going to pass.
From what I understand, I read a quote from, I believe it was from Chris, the lead vocalist in the band, Chris Loporto, if I said that right. Anyway, basically it sounds like lyrically the album is kind of their commentary on sort of the state of society in general, and how basically how I took it is that we've all made mistakes in some way that kind of affect things. Anyway, whatever. I'm not going to get too deep into that. But it was one little quote I read. I should look up the quote and read it to you. Because maybe I misinterpreted it entirely.
Right off the hop, it's not going to be a very uplifting album.
What are you saying? You're right. Hold on. I'm going to see if I can actually find this quote. Of This Too Won't Pass, which is blah, blah, blah. Problems haunt you, infect you, and in time become a part of who you are. You might find ways to distract yourself or try and forget, but every time you look in the mirror, you'll only see reminders of what you hate. Evil surrounds us and in time becomes a part of who we are. Let this band be a reminder of that. Sounds so happy.
Oh, my goodness.
Just an uplifting album. Having said that, I liked it.
Really?
I liked it a lot.
Are you really?
Yeah. So here's the thing. I had heard their previous album.
I knew you would like this album too. I had a feeling.
Their previous album, "Fail You Again," which also another uplifting title. Just let
There's a theme. There's a common thread.
Yeah. So it's funny because when I first put it on, I was kind of like, okay, what is this? Sort of like with the first song, "What Have We Done?" I was kind of like, all right. And there's some screaming going on here too, which is funny because the screaming, not entirely, but for the most part, kind of gets left behind.
Yeah.
Within the first, maybe like the first song has the most screaming out of any songs, and then track 2 and 3 maybe have a little bit, and then it, from what I can remember, it just kind of disappears, which I thought was a little strange.
Yeah, it's odd.
But I mean, it is what it is. This is the first thing I really noticed with this record, though. Alkaline Trio influences all over this thing.
Yeah.
All over this thing.
Now that you say that.
The track, sometimes you...
It's a lot of Matt Skiba.
Yeah, sometimes you meet the right... And then it stops. I don't know what the title of that song is. Hold on. Sometimes you meet the right people at the wrong times. That, like, melody-wise... And yeah, Matt Skiba is the right Alkaline Trio member to pick, because I'm like, there's just times where I'm like, you were listening to Alkaline Trio when you wrote the song. And then even things like... titles like Amnesia 666. I'm like, that's very Alkaline Trio for me.
Yeah.
But
that's got Matt Skiba written.
It's funny because like 2 tracks before, Malicious 444. I don't know what that means, but
there's a lot of numbers and negative words. I'm not sure.
Hell in a Handbasket, also another kind of Alkaline Trio title, if you ask me. My Queen, also kind of an Alkaline Trio title.
You're right. I never thought of that, but you're dead on.
An awful lot of it.
Yeah.
My Queen is a great song though. In my mind, it has the lyric of the album, because there are some lyrics on here where I'm like, okay, it's a little cliche for me, but let's see here, the chorus, where is it? Oh yeah, the chorus where it says, "Threw your arms around me way too fast and questioned if I thought it all would last, blocking out our future with my past." This is the line: "If ignorance is bliss, then why'd you ask?" Fantastic line. I think it's like it's great. But lyrically, there are a few points on the album where I'm like, okay, you're a little cliche here and there, but I don't know. I really actually liked this record, surprisingly.
See, yeah, well, that surprises me and doesn't surprise me too.
Okay, now you need to explain.
So here's the thing.
How does that work?
Because I just know like our dynamic, and generally, if I like really don't like something, I tend to find that you find something in it that you
Right.
enjoy.
Sure.
So let me just say, I listened to this album. You sent it to me whenever,
like last
and
Friday.
I listened to it right away. I listened to it the whole way through, and I could not pick out one single song
Oh man.
that interested
Yeah.
me. In fact, I listened to the whole album, and I was like, I don't even know what to talk about this because it literally just happened. Like I tolerated.
It is short.
I
too, though.
tolerated its existence for the few minutes that it passed into my ears, and then it was over, and I was like, well, that didn't grab me, so that's not a great start. So I listened to it again.
Yeah.
Did absolutely nothing for me. Did absolutely nothing for me.
I don't know.
I did not like this album at all.
That's too funny
No.
because I really, I think when I first listened to it, I had some reservations about it because I was a little bit. I mean, the Alkaline Trio stuff that I was hearing all over the place for me was kind of a little too on the nose, and I was trying to figure out. I'm like, okay, is this band being like true to themselves and honest with what they're trying to portray here, or is it just like, oh, we like Alkaline Trio and we like these things about Alkaline Trio, let's include them in our in what we do and just try to make something in that regard. But the more I listened to it, the more I was kind of like, you know what, I just found on most songs they did something that would grab my interest at some point in time or another, whether it was a line here or there, or a dynamic in a song, or a melody, like specifically, like there was something always. Like, I'm not going to put this anywhere near like my favorite record of the year or anything like that, but I found we review a lot of albums, and a lot of albums that I go, oh, I actually like this, but never really feel a desire to go back to. Whereas with this album, I would find myself from time to time being like, actually, yeah, I want to listen to this. And maybe that's because it's 30 minutes. It's 31 minutes long.
It is very quick.
It's 10 songs. It doesn't take long to get through it. So I don't feel like, it's work to listen to, or that I need to set aside a certain amount of time where I'm like, okay, if I want to listen to this, I really need to make sure I set aside that time or break it up sometimes. Like there's some albums where, and then that can affect my reaction to an album if it's, like let's talk about going back a few episodes ago to 21 Pilots. That record was so long that generally for when we did our review, I had to listen to it in sections kind of.
Yep.
Which disturbed what they were trying to do as a whole. Like my appreciation for that record grew when I got to listen to it on a road trip and be like, okay, I'm going to be on the road for 6 hours. I'm going to put this on. A, it's going to eat up an hour, and B, I have the time to kind of listen to it uninterrupted.
Yeah.
And that's a bonus. So an album where an album comes in at 30, 31 minutes, it's very easy to listen to. And because myself, like, I mean, if it didn't grab me, that's one thing. But there were bits and pieces where I was like, okay, I can get into this, and enjoyed it. At times, like I said, lyrically stuff would pop up and I'd kind of be like, okay, like whatever.
Yeah.
That's been said 1,000 times before, basically in that exact same way. But the ignorance is bliss line, every time it came up, I was like, oh, I just think that's such a great line.
That's a cool line.
Yeah, if
I'll
ignorance
give
is
it
bliss,
that.
then
Yeah.
why'd you ask?
Yeah,
Like,
that's a cool line.
Yeah.
No, see, when I listened to it, it actually shocked me because the music just stopped. The only thing I noticed was when the music just stopped, and I was like, and I looked at the album, I was like, oh crap, like that. This isn't going to be a very good podcast because I didn't get anything from that. So then I listened to it again, and the same thing. Like I don't know, it's not my style. I'm very much more like I like the bouncy, faster, a little more poppier stuff than you do. And this was just a kind of little down. I really didn't like their vocals.
Yeah, and that was something that kind of had to grow on me a little bit, and I didn't know if it was necessarily like his voice or if it was kind of how it was like in production, you know,
Yeah, I
like
don't know
how it
what's
was
happening
sounding.
there.
But I was able to like I don't think his voice is anything that's like that people would be like, oh, I dislike this versus just saying like it doesn't do anything for me,
Yeah.
or what have you. But it's funny because in listening to this album, and a similar thing that I've discussed with Bearings, and a similar thing that I've discussed with when we listen to Stand Atlantic, is like there is something, and maybe I can pinpoint it a little bit more here, but there's a nostalgic vibe going on here, and maybe that's the Alkaline Trio thing. But at the same point, there are a few points on the album where I'm like, this doesn't remind me of Alkaline Trio, it reminds me of something else, but I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like that. It did remind me and make me go back and listen to a band from like the early 2000s that I listened to one album. They're called the Evan Anthem. And
Never
I went
heard
back
of
and
them.
listened to it and went, oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, don't.
No, it's
There's a
I'm
reason.
hearing something here on Can't Swim, like, and not saying that they're an influence on Can't Swim by any means, because like the Evan Anthem were some like small time like Christian band sort of thing,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
I'm like, the chances are very, very slight.
You never know.
But there's just like there is a little bit of a similarity in sound on some of their songs. But when I went back and listened to the Evan Anthem, I think the album was Prologue. I was like, no, this is like much worse than I remember it being.
Yeah.
But which it happens from time to time. But yeah, I don't know. This also made me want to go back and listen, because I have listened to their album that came out before this called Fail You Again.
Is it similar? Is it a little
That's
different?
what I can't remember, right?
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
I listened to it and I added it, and I remember like the artwork is just like basically some girl's face, a green kind of cover, and I was like, okay, like there was something striking I think about the artwork for that, and I feel like they did something similar with the singles off that album, and so I listened to it, but I don't remember off the top of my head anything about it. But it's just why they ended up in my recommendations when this album came out.
That's kind of how I feel about this whole album.
Right.
Is I listened to it twice all the way through, which is more listens than I do for most of these albums,
Yeah.
right? Like, and for me, it just like it really didn't jump out. Nothing stuck with me, which was I think telling. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah, which is fine.
Yeah.
Like I think it's interesting because like on the record, there's a number of times where I'm like, oh, I really enjoy what the drums are doing here. Like, because there's some kind of on some of the songs there's kind of like chaos with what the drums are doing at different points, but it's like controlled chaos. It's
Yeah.
not like they're like playing off time and doing all this crazy stuff. It's just like a chaotic sort of beat that I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat, because like the guitars, the bass, that kind of stuff. There's not really anything that stands out that they're doing. Like they're doing a great job doing what they're doing, but it's all fairly straightforward, right? So
Yeah.
for me, this album finds its home in like its starts and stops kind of that it has going in songs, and then vocal melodies are kind of what bring it home for me, and then like the drums at different times where I'm like, oh, that's a little different than, you know, maybe how most other drummers would have played it. And like, so the drummer, I'm gonna do a shout out here, his name's I don't know if it's a man or a woman now. It's either Andrea Morgan or Andrea. Like, it could be a girl.
It could be either way.
Yeah,
even
now,
for
but
both genders.
I don't have a picture of him or her, so I couldn't tell you. But like the drums I thought on this record were great, and now I gotta want to like watch a music video and see.
Yeah.
if I can figure it out. But even
You shoehorned yourself into this.
Yeah, maybe. But a shout out to Andrea
Shout out.
or Andrea or
Shout out to the drummer.
yeah. I mean, whatever. Great drums on
Great
this
drums.
record. That's something that jumped out to me anyway. But yeah, and I mean, it's understandable. Not everyone gravitates towards the same thing, right?
No.
Like, but this one stood out for me, and I do find it interesting because, you know, I know where you're going to vote when it comes down to voting between, you know, this and our current champs, which is Bearings, which
Yeah.
has been now champs for a little while because, last week we did some reviews and we didn't match. I was like, I don't know if it makes sense for me, because I had Aaron on the podcast last week. We did 2 episodes, and I mean, the one that would have gone up against Bearings was Architects, and I would have been interested to see what you had to say about that record. But I was like, I don't know if it makes sense to like have Aaron come in and vote if he, you know, he hasn't been, you know, the one voting
Sure.
for Bearings necessarily this whole time. Right?
I'd have
So-
allowed it.
Yeah, but I mean, spoiler alert, this week I'm actually gonna say Can't Swim.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, part of it's because I'm just kind of curious to see what happens. But also
All right.
because here's the thing, and this is this is the way music works for me. Bearings Blue in the Dark is the definite, like, better record. But where I'm at right now and listening to, I've listened to Bearings Blue in the Dark a ton.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, this is, and I talked about this, you know, in our last episode. I can't remember what we reviewed right now. In the last episode. Oh, was it Waster?
Yes.
Is that what it was?
Yep.
And talked about how, you know, sometimes like that sheen wears off, and the
Yep.
sheen hasn't necessarily worn off, but I'm like, I'm enjoying something different right now.
Well, I would agree. I would say that the sheen has worn off on bearings for me, but still, there is just no comparison for me. I mean, it is black and white. Bearings is so much better than this.
And it's
album.
funny because I feel like when we reviewed Waster Identity Crisis, you had said something kind of similar, but in the reverse. Because I was like, there's no comparing. Like, Waster was fine, but there was no comparing for me. Like, Bearings was the easy pick. But you, if I recall, were kind of like, oh, it was a tough decision.
Yeah, it was. I was a
so-
toss-up for me.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I'm actually going to go with like the toss-up, but just to like throw it out,
make it
there.
interesting?
Yeah, I want to see what happens when I throw the poll up on
All right.
Facebook. And
I will
see,
be very disappointed with all of our listeners if they vote for this album, because there's just no way. Listen, and it's not a shot against this band or anything, but
Yeah.
if we're just comparing this to Bearings, I think there's no competition.
Yeah.
in my view.
Yeah.
It's my view, it's my
There are
opinion.
two very different records.
They are.
Like the vibe is very different on both of them. But at the same point, I think they actually do some similar things. Like I said, with the and I don't know how they pull it off, what they're doing to make it, but the nostalgia vibe that I get on both of those records. Plus, I know like when we talked about Bearings the first time, you brought up the drums at one point, and I was like, oh, the drums kind of changed things up on that record, and they kind of changed things up on this record for me a little bit. And so like there are some similarities
All
there.
right. Fair enough.
And I mean, I know you won't, but I would say like give it a couple listens, just because like if you're a fan of Alkaline Trio at all, I feel like there might be something there for you.
You did that. That's a good pull. I mean,
Yeah.
that now that I think about it, it's very Alkaline Trio.
There are
Yeah.
definite vibes
Yep,
on
for
the record.
sure,
And,
for
and,
sure.
and that's kind of what, for me, drew me in, I think, was that Alkaline Trio vibe. And I'm like, okay, now I kind of want to listen to this again. And then from there, it did kind of start to grow on me. Because initially I was like, I wasn't sure what I thought about the album. And then I really did start to enjoy it. And I feel like I just like that it's, for me, it's like when I'm on my commute or whatever, I just crank it up. I was like, I don't know what it does for me,
No,
but it does something.
no, it just missed the mark for me
And
entirely.
that's fair. So you're obviously going with Bearings.
Bearings.
There's no question
Ah,
about it.
come on,
And
guys.
I'm just gonna throw the wild card out there and see what happens. I'm gonna go with Can't Swim, and I mean, no, like I really like Bearings, but this album I think too, like Bearings, it also surprised me. This isn't their debut full length either, right? Like this is their second full length album, so they're a touch established, but. I think their first full length was actually released last year, so they're like being busy.
Wow.
It says Fail You Again.
I respect that.
Also, speaking of Bearings, they do another similar thing. They're on Pure Noise Records.
all right.
But yeah, Fail You Again came out in 2017. I wonder when, it must have been early 2017.
Wow. An album a year.
It was released. The band announced the debut on February 8th, 2017. What's the release date? March 10th. So,
Okay.
early first half of the year, whereas this came out back half of this year. So
That makes sense.
18 months or so separating the two records, but they're pretty busy. Anyway, yeah, so we got a split. So if you're listening to this,
Hard to believe.
find us on Facebook. You can just facebook.com/musictomypeers, or just, there's that search bar on Facebook. Just type in.
Yep.
It's actually, when you see it, it's MTMP, Music to My Peers.
Yeah. Don't be confused.
Don't be confused. That it is the right page. You can also find me on Instagram at David to My Peers, and musicpeers.blogspot.com. That's where you can find all of our episodes. You can also find them all, obviously, wherever you get podcasts. Wherever you're listening to this, you can find all of our episodes there.
Yes.
But if you like looking at pictures and reading random words that I write, musicpeers.blogspot.com is...
They're incoherent, but they're
Yeah, sometimes they make zero sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like I put a little bit of effort into writing up a synopsis. Other times I'm like, here's a music, we review it. And then I was miming typing on a keyboard with giant hands. But anyways, that is going to do it for this episode. So we will be back again sometime, and we'll see next week, I guess.
So, So then if this goes through, so they're going to vote.
Yeah.
And if they side with you, then
Then Bearings is out.
wow. All right.
Bearings is out at the limit anyway. This is the limit.
This
for
is the
Bearings.
limit. So
if
next
Bearings,
stop.
If Bearings wins, the next review that Bearing, we'll have to figure out how we do it because I don't know what's coming out this week because there could be something worth reviewing. But Bearings will either go up against, like we've said, like heavy hitters in the past type deal. We I don't know. We got to figure out how we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Because if
It's brand new.
well, yeah, and if something new comes out that's like worth reviewing, what does it go up against is the question, right? Like unless it goes up against that giant list of underrated albums that people on Reddit gave me. So we'll figure it out. But yeah, if Bearings wins, it's got a heavy hitter up next, and then it's done. Whereas if Can't Swim wins, Bearings is done, and we're on to New Champions, which I'm assuming I'll be interested because I really hope Can't Swim wins just to make you listen to it again.
Oh gosh, if Can't Swim wins, it's a low bar to beat. Okay, I'm sorry.
Maybe you will listen to it and you will be like, oh, actually, I am starting to like this. It presents itself, and this was for me. It presents itself as a grower, not a shower.
Yeah, has to be.
Has to be. Anyways, that's going to do it for us. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening. And I was going to say, too, wherever you listen to us, go leave a rating, a review, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. It helps. It's funny. I noticed the other day, I was like, oh, we actually have, I think it was 4 or 5 reviews on iTunes.
Do we?
Yeah, all of them are 5 stars, except for one that's 1 star. So I'm like, I really want to read the comment of the person
We
who
just
left 1
torched
star.
their favorite band.
Yeah,
That's what happened.
but
Yeah.
it won't. It only lets me read one review, and I was like, oh, why? Because I think it says something on iTunes that we need more reviews for them to be visible. But I'm like, shouldn't I be able to read them?
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. So go, especially on iTunes, because I want to read if they left an actual review. If they just dropped a 1 star, I mean, I can't read anything, but I want to read that one review.
Yeah,
and
I'm
see
very
what they had to
curious.
say. I hope it's just something like that Jordan guy doesn't like good music. Enter, and then
Or
it
at least-
turns out it was me.
Or at least someone who's upset that you said a day to remember is easy core.
It's
gonna
probably
be
that
one or the
guy.
other.
There was a
Yeah.
guy on, I think it was on Reddit, that was so upset.
Yeah, he's
that
on
I
my
called-
side here,
Yeah, the only one. He was so upset
And he
that
let
I
you
called
know.
a day to remember Easy Core. Like, well, they were literally on the first tour that the word Easy Core was used. I think that's a precedent setter right there.
Oh, man.
They're the kings of Easy Core.
You know what? They're due to have an album come out too. Actually,
They probably are. Anyway, we're rambling. Go
rambling.
review us so that I can read the one bad review. I'm curious to hear what it says. Anyways, we'll be back. So, bye.
See ya.